Also, and this is where the chronological fallacy kicks in, this actually dates, this particular belief dates to 180 AD. 180 AD. That's the earliest we can date it. Many of the beliefs of the mystery religions date centuries after the starting of the religion itself. And all mystery religions post-date the New Testament letters. No scholar thinks they predated. Now, there are certain, like maybe undeveloped forms or gods that might have predated certain mythological belief systems that later became mystery religions, but all mystery religions themselves, in a developed sense, post-date the New Testament letters. None of them predate Christianity. All right, some of the pagan beliefs might predate Christianity, but none of them mystery religions itself does. All communions, according to my resources, post-date the New Testament letters, and they're not really called communion, by the way. They're called they're common feasts, but they're not communion. They're not being referred to as communion at all in these mystery religions. They're common feasts, and they all post-date the New Testament letters. We don't even know what these mystery religions even originally believed, because many of their beliefs date centuries later. So when they don't bother checking the dates of their sources, this is referred to as the chronological fallacy. Because you kind of imagine if all these beliefs date centuries later, or after, or post-date the New Testament letters, then obviously they cannot influence it. What makes matters worse for the skeptic is that there is actually no evidence whatsoever that any of these mystery religions existed in first century Jewish Palestine. None. The earliest, I think, is probably dated to roughly about 180. Around 180 AD is the earliest inscription found in Palestine. There is no evidence whatsoever that any of these mystery religions were dwelling in first century Palestine. That's crucial, because in order for them to influence Christianity at all, they'd have to be in the right time and the right place, and they're not. Okay, the fifth fallacy, one that I like very much, is called the terminological fallacy. This is where they read Christian terminology into the text. Not only that, but they actually redefine Christian terminology just to fit their examples. And by the way, none of these claims, as already mentioned, mention communion. They don't mention incarnation. They don't mention virgin births. They don't mention resurrection. These terms are being read into the text. On top of that, these terms are being redefined to match their examples. Good example of that is rising and dying and rising fertility gods. These were not usually considered physical events. They didn't rise from the grave physically. They did not die by crucifixion or nothing like that. And they constantly kept coming back. See, it was sort of a way of them to explain why crops died in the winter but came back in the spring. So they would constantly, it had to do with vegetation cycles. So it was cyclic. You know, it was a constant cycle. It's not a one-time event. It did not happen for the sins of the world. It was not a bodily resurrection event. None of those things are even true. It was basically done as a way of explaining how crops died in the winter and came back in the spring. Other examples is virgin births. There's one case of Osiris. He's cut into 14 different pieces, and they get scattered all over the world. Isis goes looking for it and finds only 13. Osiris comes back in the underworld as some sort of god of the underworld in some sort of shadowy gloom. Michael Kona said he has a friend that actually said that this is not a resurrection, this is a zombification. And it's true. Basically, these accounts did not in any way show the bodily resurrection of Jesus. Which, by the way, the word resurrection actually refers in Judaism as a physical resurrection. They had a belief of general resurrection in the world. This is hardly a comparison to any of these counts or claims that were being made. Same thing with virgin birth. There's one account where Isis is floating above Horus, and she gets pregnant. But Isis is the wife of Horus. She's his wife. So arguably, this is not a case of a virgin birth at all. In fact, other accounts of claims of virgin birth have been found to be fabrications. We'll get more into that in the 7th one. But basically, like in the case of Murtha, for example, Murtherism. Murtha was born of a rock. Some try to say he was born of a virgin, but all of the inscriptions we have from Murtherism says that he was born of a rock. So this Christian terminological fallacies, when they try to read Christian terminology into it, they redefine Christianity. There's one account where they say that this guy's coffin was buried in his coffin, and his coffin gets thrown in the river. And see, that's baptism. No, it isn't. Baptism was symbolically represented the resurrection of Jesus, going down the old you, coming up the new you. This guy never came back up at all. So we're not talking about an actual parallel to baptism. In fact, none of these are actually true parallels. And that's what scholars and historians, Christian and non-Christian, actually discovered as well from these accounts. The 6th fallacy is called the biblical fallacy. This is when they attack a late Christian tradition and they try to make it look like it reflects on 1st century Christianity. Example of that is like the 25th of December and Easter. They say, see there, 25th of December, Murtha was born on 25th. Constantine, before his conversion, worshipped Sol Invictus, which often been associated with Murtha, from Murtherism. And the 25th of December was to coincide with the winter solstice. The theory goes, we don't know this for certain, but scholars believe that instead of outright banning pagan holidays, they simply adopt them with Christian meaning. Now, in connection to our discussion, does this prove that Christians no, it doesn't. Maybe later Christians did, but it doesn't reflect on 1st century Christianity. The New Testament is written in 1st century, and the New Testament does not give us the birth of Jesus. We don't know when Jesus was born. Many scholars think he might have been born around the warmer climates, winter, or not winter, but like around April, around April, June, somewhere in there, warmer climates. That's the reason why there would be shepherds and so forth. But as far as that goes, the new meaning for 25th of December, I believe, is Christian now, because we're not worshiping pagan deity. But either way, it does not reflect on 1st century Christianity. This is where the biblical fallacies get created. And there's several things. I want to finish off by telling you there's several things that is overlooked by these mystery religions. First of all, they overlook the fact that Christianity, along with Judaism, which Christianity spawned, are very exclusivistic religions. Where mystery religions are syncretistic, meaning that they borrow from other religions and sometimes even from each other. Doesn't mean common religion, but sometimes they borrow from each other in other religions. They saw it all equal. I mean, it's all good to them. But Christianity, like Judaism, was very exclusivistic. They isolate themselves away from the pagan world. Alright? So they were not very exclusivistic or very syncretist. They would have viewed that as being 100% blasphemy. It would have been considered an abomination to them. They would have been appalled at it. Paul and Barnabas was being worshipped as gods in the book of Acts, and Paul rips his clothes, which in that day, ripping your clothes is a sign of committing, hearing blasphemy. And he says, wait a minute, whoa, that's not the purpose of our message. So they don't look at this kind of thing as being good. The book of Acts says that Jesus is the only name in heaven and earth where men must be saved. Now there's no salvation in any other. In the Gospel